I actually looked at the big four fantasy sites, Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, and Underdog, and I tried to figure out round by round how many of each position goes off the board, gets drafted. Is that going to impact the way that you can do strategies across different platforms? So there is some truth to this. The truth is, in today's video, I'm going to help you draft the right way, regardless of what your league settings look like. If you're in an 8-man, 10-man, 12-man, or 14-man league, start 7, start 10, I don't care what you're doing. We're going to tell you how to draft the right way in 2024. Last week, I dropped a video on the best strategy in fantasy drafts. You guys showed me so much love. I appreciate you big time. But you also had some really good questions in the comment section. All right, for example, does this strategy change in half PPR? Another person asked, how about a 3 starting wide receiver league in my lineup? Another one said, what about a 10-man if I'm in a 10-man league? Another one asked, how about an 8 or a 10-man? Would this still work? And the last one is, well, what if I'm drafting on ESPN? Or, now I'm thinking people might be asking the question, what if I'm on Yahoo? What if I'm on CBS, right? Or Underdog or Sleeper? So in today's video, I want to expand on these thoughts and talk about what is by far the most important secret, you could call it, but the most important juice to you winning your fantasy drafts, okay? I've previously stated in a video that ultimately, regardless of your strategy, the most important thing is to draft the best available player at every pick. You don't want to force a strategy necessarily, but we want to execute one if we can, if the draft is falling that way. And that is true. But before you can know the best player at every pick, you have to understand the big 3 in your specific fantasy league. What is the big 3? Number 1, format. Number 2, team count. Number 3, the scoring of your format. Those 3 things will completely shape the way that you should draft in fantasy football. And I'm going to try to make it make sense as simply as I possibly can. So let's start with format. One of the big 3s is understanding your format. For example, on ESPN, Yahoo, CBS, the NFL app, most leagues are going to be a start 7. What does a start 7 mean? That's how big your starting lineup is, minus the kicker and defense, right? So you're starting 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a single flex spot. That is standard on ESPN. If you go in a mock draft there, that's standard on Yahoo, CBS. That's a very small league, but it is standard. I would draft differently. Whereas if I was on Sleeper or Underdog, typically lineups are much bigger over on Sleeper, which is an incredible app. I cannot recommend Sleeper enough if you're playing fantasy football. The best platform by far. So let's just look at an example for my home league, okay? In my home league, we play in a start 9 league. That means we can start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 3 flex spots. 9 total starting players, not including kickers or defense. And I would draft completely differently in an ESPN standard like start 7 league versus a start 9 or a start 7. And I'll show you guys in a sec how we can look at this with your league. Because look, ultimately the goal is to score the most fantasy points with the starting lineup that you are given. Okay, so if I'm going to sit here and tell you, well, you should go 0 RB or hero RB, or, you should prioritize only wide receivers, only running backs, it's completely pointless unless you understand your format, and completely pointless unless your draft, your format makes sense for that strategy. Okay, so we talked about format. That's number 1. Number 2 is team count, aka how many members are in your league. Is it an 8 team, a 10 team, a 12 team, a 14 team? These are the most common formats. How large your league is going to completely change how you should draft or how important particular positions are. But that's number 1. Number 2, we talked about the big 2. How about the last one, big 3? What is the scoring of your league? Is it half PPR? Are you in a full PPR? PPR meaning points per reception. Are you in a tiered PPR, right? I mean, do running backs get half PPR, wide receivers get full, and tight ends get 1.5? There are leagues like that. Is there a premium on the tight end position, right? Which gives tight ends more points per reception. Is there a premium on the carries of your running backs? Do quarterbacks score 4 or 6-point passing touchdowns. Because in 4-point passing touchdown leagues, rushing quarterbacks get an advantage because they score rushing touchdowns. Most leagues, all right, I don't want this to get overwhelming for some people, but most leagues are quite simply half PPR or PPR. That's the most common. And they're not tied in premium, and they're 4-point passing touchdown. That is the most common thing, all right? So if your buddy invited you to a fantasy league, that's probably what you're rocking. But regardless, guys, talk to your commissioner. Find out those settings because they are crucial to drafting the right way. The last thing we'll talk about before we dive into my database that I've brought for you guys is the specific ADP of the fantasy platform you're using. ADP meaning average draft position, where players go in your draft. So in my last strategy video, I brought you guys mock drafts from the Sleeper Fantasy app. But William had a fantastic question. He said, what if you are drafting on ESPN where running backs are typically taken much earlier than other sites? So what I went ahead and did for you guys in this database that is available for you is I actually looked at the big 4 fantasy sites, Sleeper, ESPN, Yahoo, and Underdog, and I tried to figure out round by round how many of each position goes off the board, gets drafted. Is that going to impact the way that you can do strategies across different platforms? So there is some truth to this. The truth is players go at different spots on every different platform. However, I've provided you some data here to show you that it really isn't making that big of a difference. Like, let's look at the top 12 across all these platforms, okay? So the top 12, for example, on Sleeper, you got 0 quarterbacks going in the top 12 on ADP and tight ends, but running backs, you got 4, wide receivers, you got 8. That's the same on ESPN. That's very close on Yahoo, okay? So, okay, one round through, not that big of a difference in ADP. How about the first 2 rounds, top 24? Well, you can see here, 1 quarterback is going in the first 2 rounds across Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo. At tight end, it's very similar, 1, 2, or none. And that running back, we're either 9, 10, or 11. At wide receiver, we're 13, 11, 12, okay? So we're still very, very close across those 3 sites. Let's go all the way down to top 46 ADP, okay? The first 4 rounds of a fantasy draft in a 12-man league. Well, the top 46 ADP, you can see quarterbacks, we got 5 going off the board in Sleeper, 5 going off the board in ESPN, 6 in Yahoo. Running backs, 15, 17, 18. Wide receivers, 24, 21, 22. So it really actually isn't that different. I wholeheartedly believe that you can use any strategy across these platforms because while the players, where they're going, specific players might be higher or lower across these sites, you can still perform the same strategies. Now, you'll notice I didn't talk about Underdog much because Underdog is its own beast, and it is the one that really stands out. So if you're drafting on Underdog, you really do need to find like a specific video on Underdog strategy, which is not what we're covering today. But any other platform, as of right now, the ADP shows you can execute any strategy you like. Okay, so this all might be daunting, but we've put in a lot of the legwork here to kind of now show you exactly what league you're in, how you should draft, all right? So I'm going to dive into it. Let's talk about 8-team leagues. All right, 8-team leagues. 8-team leagues are very, very, very small, okay? And we can take advantage of how to draft in these leagues just by understanding our format. Okay, so in an 8-team league, if you're in a start 7, that's as small as it gets. You have 1 flex spot, okay? This is where we are right here. If you have 1 flex spot, that means at most you can start 3 wide receivers at a time or 3 running backs at a time. Not a lot of players you got to worry about. And that means if you're in an 8-man start 7, you'll see that you can draft your starting lineup in the first 56 picks. Everyone's going to have an opportunity to draft their starting lineup. I'll tell you why this is important in a second. So in an 8-man start 7 league, you can fill your starting lineup in the first 56 picks. Why is that important to note? Because let's pretend we're in a 14-man for a second. In a 14-man league, even in a small start 7 lineup, we can only fill our starting lineup in the first 98 picks, almost double the ADP. Obviously it's going to be much more difficult to field a good team in a 14-team league than an 8-team league. There's less people drafting good players available down the board. So now that we have that understanding, how do we take advantage of an 8-man league, or what is the important position? Well, I've gone ahead and made a position priority list for you guys, regardless of what format you're on. We'll look at some mock drafts, and I've also created team construction for every single league you're in. You can see hopefully now on your screen, highlighted in yellow, orange, red. You can see exactly, depending on if you're in an 8-man, whatever, where you can fill your starting lineup from. But let's say you're in an 8-team league. In an 8-team league, my priority positions that I want to hit right are quarterback and tight end. Why is it quarterback and tight end? You can see here in a half PPR, I'm going to prefer tight ends. That's going to be my priority from number 1 to 4, quarterback and tight end. But in half PPR, it will be quarterback. In full PPR, it will be tight end. Why? Because in a full PPR league, tight ends will score, more points than they will in a half PPR. So they'll give you a bigger advantage. Now, why are quarterbacks and tight ends important to me? Well, think about it. In an 8-team league, everybody's team is going to be freaking fantastic, guys. All right. It is not difficult to draft in an 8-man league. Everyone's going to have very good teams because everyone's going to have a chance to draft great players. The difference between you making the playoffs and actually being a championship team is having an elite quarterback and elite tight end. Those onesie positions where, you can really make a difference in your roster. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go ahead and take a quarterback or a tight end in the first round. There's no need to do that. Wait until they actually are supposed to go off the board, let's say in the 3rd round. But if ADP is starting to come around and you're like, okay, I think quarterbacks and tight ends might come off the board here, don't wait. In this format, just go ahead and draft them, right? So you can see some examples here. We'll put this on the big screen as well so you can see it. But you can see in this example, in this mock draft, we went CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, but in the 3rd and 4th round, we decided we absolutely have to prioritize an elite tight end and quarterback here. So we got Kelsey and Hurts. And look at that. Still, with the rest of my draft, because it's such a small league, I was able to fill out the rest of my roster very easily, right? Kamara in the 7th, Pickens in the 8th. So that is how I would draft in the 8-team. How about in a start 10? It wouldn't really change all that much. The only difference is I just push those quarterbacks and tight ends down the board a little bit, but I would be willing to take them even higher. So ultimately, what you need to know if you're in an 8-man league, 8-team league, prioritize quarterback and tight end. I promise you, okay? You're going to be able to fill out the rest of your roster easily. Let's move on to a 10-team league. In a 10-team league, that's still a smaller format. Okay, if you think about it, if you're a 10-team start 8, you can still fill out your starting roster in the first 80 picks. You can see let's say your start 8, 10-man, you can see the yellow range, the dark yellow range. That is the round in round 8 where you can fill out your starting lineup. Okay, so still relatively small, but it does depend on how big your starting lineup is, right? If you're start 10, that means that you can start up to 6 receivers. I might go ahead in a PPR format and prioritize the receiver position. So you can see in a 10-man league, for me, let's just say I'm a start 9. I would prioritize the wide receiver position. Like we said, you can start 5 receivers. And let's look at a 10-team start 9 mock. You can see we got Tyreek Hill, Metcalf, Pickens, Deontay Johnson, and Brian Thomas. We were still able to get great running backs, a really good tight end, and a good quarterback. I will say in most formats this year, guys, I am prioritizing tight end just because I think they're priced really, really well. All right. And if you want to look at this database, guys, and you want to dive into exactly what your format is, then all you got to do is be a Mother Flocker member on the Flock Fantasy website. So I'll put a little promo here on the screen. If you want access to this, you can get a 7-day free trial if you like, but use a promo code LAND at sign up. You'll get 30% off if you want to become a member. And then if you are a member, you get all of the premium tools as well. But how about 12-team? In a 12-team league, you can see that you can fill in a start 7, you can fill your starting lineup in the first 84 picks. In a start 10, it's going to be 120 picks until you can finally fill your starting lineup, which is 6 total players. 6 total receivers is what you can start. So in that league, I am going to deploy the anchor round 2 running back strategy, which we talked about in the last video. We're going to go elite wide receiver in round 1, anchor RB in round 2. Then we're still going to smash some receivers, tight ends, some quarterbacks, and just hit running backs from round 8 onwards. That is how I would deploy based off of that league. In a 14-team league, I'll be honest with you guys, this is a very difficult league to draft. So personally, the way I would go after a 14-team league is at every position, I just want to take the best available player. I do not want to force a strategy here. Take the best available player. And what I will say is you can really have an advantage in your 14-team league if you hit on a late round quarterback or a tight end. So late round quarterback for me this year, that's Jaden Daniels. If you fill out the rest of your lineup and you find it difficult to find a quarterback, Jaden Daniels could be that difference maker. I also think at tight end, you could have names like TJ Hawkinson if they fall down the board, Dallas Goedert, maybe Pat Freiermuth, Ben Sinnott. So anyway, hopefully I have made this as easy as it is to understand. I do think if you want to dive into this database that I have, I would encourage you to check out the pinned comment, but feel free to leave any comments down below. Like I've always said, strategy doesn't matter if you're not drafting the best available player. If your entire league decides we're going to draft 12 running backs in the first round, well, clearly the best available player is not going to be running back for you at your next pick. You see where I'm coming from? Maybe you're in a league where everyone's going to go wide receiver in round 1 and you have the last pick. Of course, you're going to take CMC with the last pick, right? So that context is important, but I hope today's video has been helpful. I believe that with many strategies, you can win your draft. Obviously in a 12 team, like I said, I prefer anchor round 2, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate you all. Love. You don't need to wait until September to play fantasy football. We're playing fantasy football right now over on underdogfantasy.com. They got real leagues, real tournaments, real money on the line. If you haven't signed up yet, use a promo code LAND. We got a direct link in the pinned comment. And when you sign up with our promo code, we're going to match your deposit 50% up to $250. So right now, if you use our code, you can get $125 free just by using the promo code LAND. That's bonkers. By the way, if you don't like best ball, how about player props? Because they got a lot of player props over there. Every single position you can bet higher or lower on the certain prop, and even season-long projections now, you can bet the higher or lower mark. So check out the pinned comment. Great way to support this channel, and also just to have some fun as we're kind of getting through, the offseason and getting closer to the NFL time. So appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for watching the video. We'll see you very soon. Let me know what you think, your comments down below, and all love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.